Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion today. My name is Kimberly Quinn, say hi, little G, and I am thrilled to be here in the deep woods with like a trillion bugs to have this conversation. Where I just saw some nice people. You don't usually see a lot of people up here, but it's the beginning part, that's where you might see them. And they said, how are the deer flies? Or I said, how are the deer flies? They're like, can lift right off the ground. And they said, is there anything you can use? Because the toxic chemicals don't really work too well for deer flies. They work for everything else, mosquitoes and stuff. But I said, just get really good at smacking them. It's like, too bad, so sad, whap, kind of thing. All right, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about, actually I just did one earlier because I've got videos just in me. They just came to me, like in spirit, inspiration, right? And so I want to talk how misery leads to aging, actually, right? We've been talking about depression and spirituality with, Lisa Miller's awesome book, The Awakened Brain. But and then I was just inspired by something else. And I don't think people realize that. They hear, oh, misery loves company. Misery loves miserable company. That's how it goes. And that the negative Nellies tend to bring everybody down with them if you're willing. Okay, if you're willing. And so personally, I like it force field up against negativity. We're not talking about not really being actively present for a best friend who's hard as aching. Not what we're saying. We're talking about the whiners and complainers and well, it's raining again. The clouds have a conspiracy when I'm off. Oh, it's all raining. It's raining again. Okay, but the misery also is not only is it contagious, but it spreads almost like emotional cancer. Like it just like spreads. And I don't think people necessarily realize that, and it causes aging. So what inspired me? I'm inspired by lots of things. I was watching an old, I think it was an older, like a way older, brief Oprah, my dear friend Oprah, who I love so much, who doesn't know that we're good friends. And there was a woman on there who was 70 years old, 70. And she came up from the audience, and of course, Oprah, you were kind of primed because you knew that she was going to be much younger. But she said, how old do you think this woman is? And she goes bouncing up there. I don't remember her name, in her little dress, looking amazing, not a wrinkle on her anywhere, and just happy, happy, happy. And she started, it was short. This was like short. And, so she talks about her secrets about to staying young. And it's a lot of what we're talking about, honestly. And she said, I don't feel 70. I don't even know what 70 feels like. And she looked maybe 38 I'm not a good guesser of age in general, but I mean, she looked like really, really young. And she said when she goes places with her son, they often think she's his date, which is a little weird, but but it's obviously a compliment, and she just looks amazing. And she did say, like, physically speaking, the one thing she said I can't say enough of is moisturize, moisturize, moisturize. Not exactly what we're talking about emotionally, but moisturize, well, it kind of is. Because when we practice self-care, we're valuing ourselves. So yeah, okay. So moisturize, she said, before she even goes out the door or answers the phone or whatever she said, she moisturizes her entire body. But other than that, she said, I don't know what 70 feels like. I don't know what 60 feels like or what 50 feels like, because she just said, it just occurred to her. She had something happen early on in her adulthood, if I remember correctly. And she just sort of like reflected on it. And she said, I didn't like the way I was raised. I can relate to that. I didn't like the way I was raised. So I decided to kind of start over and raise myself. And she started making all kinds of good choices. And none of these are huge, big choices. They just aren't. She eats pretty well. And she said pretty well. We're not talking vegan. At least I didn't hear that from her. She also has a glass of wine with dinner at night. Yay, I'm a big fan. And she just says mainly, people say it's just a number, and that's so cliche, but she said it really is. I honestly don't know what 50, 60, or 70 feels like. I just do what I love, and she follows her passion around. And I can't say enough about that, because I don't know what 57 feels like, or 47, or 37. I really don't. I am very playful and fun. My inner child is also my outer child. Probably very few 57-year-olds have a remote control fart machine, but I do, and it's a lot of fun. Although I haven't seen it lately. I wonder if somebody borrowed it. It's really fun. You stick this little like disky thing behind the couch. You can only do it with people can play with you, And then it has like, I forget if it has 5 or 7 settings. It has a bunch of settings. You can do all different kinds of farts. It's like really fun. But it's so important to have fun. And it's also so important to have a sense of humor, which we were talking about in the last video. That was in relationship to effective or authentic leadership, but also true with well-being in general, because we're talking about being mindful and being in the moment. And if you want to not age quickly, having a sense of humor is one, in addition to moisturizing, is huge. Because when we're laughing, we can't be mad. When we're laughing, we can't be anxious. When we're laughing, we can't be sad or distressed or frustrated. When we're laughing, we are in the moment. And it's that spontaneity that also leads to joy. Joy is a direct result of being spontaneous. Okay, there's spontaneity going on. Joy is like in the moment. I picture like little hummingbirds, like bang, little joyful hummingbirds, like in the moment, bzz, ding, kind of thing. Joy just sort of erupts. And so it's very important to realize that it's here. Misery leads to aging. Another thing is there's so many studies on this. There's the famous Harvard study, of course, a longitudinal study, which means that it went on for generations. So I don't remember the recent torch, what person that is that's leading it, but it's been over several generations, long time. Starting out with just men in the early 20th century. Now they've included women. They studying everybody's grandchildren and everything like that. And it's the relationships. Relationships are number one for longevity, and not just living a long time, but living a high quality of life. And there is also an element, again, of disengaging from the age thing. When our relationships are in check, everything else is basically in check. Oh, and we're also they're very clear in the Harvard study that the relationships thing is not about quantity, because toxic relationships don't count and actually send us backwards. And in a marriage, let's say if it's a toxic marriage, and not that most people wouldn't be excited, about hearing about a divorce or anything like that. Though obviously there are times when it's worse to stay. There are times. Hopefully that's the exception rather than the rule. I know last I knew it was 2/3 in the United States, so that would not be the exception versus the rule. But that's an outdated stat. Maybe it's less now. But no, people aren't generally excited to hear that. But obviously there are times when something is toxic that we need to make a change, right? So we're talking about high quality. So when it comes down to it, we're talking about those relationships that also bring the misery level down, right? We've got people in our lives who love us and appreciate us, are kind, want us to rise, get excited with our accomplishments and our ideas and our dreams. It also, the main number one out of all of that, is to have somebody who you can count on. It's that 3 o'clock in the morning test. If you could call somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning with your, heartache or whatever it is, and they would be right up, you don't have to get their tea and adjust and all that, but they would be right there for you and you for them. Never say one word about what you're saying, all in confidence, without you even having to say that. You can say that, but they wouldn't have told anybody anyway. Those are the relationships that have us living a very, very long and happy existence. Where's the little G? Oh, there he is. He wants to walk still. And so, okay. So misery ages us. It's so important to listen to your heart, listen to the whispers, and realize, and also this is another small thing we can do, is returning to the breath. And Oprah was saying this. She says this a lot, actually. So I don't know which one this is coming from, and so do a lot of people say this. John Kabat-Zinn and lots of people. But when we are having those moments that are not positive, to really return to our breath. And the monk Thich Nhat, I have a hard time saying his name. They call him Thai. But when he talks about living deeply, returning to the breath, and this sounds so basic and so cheesy, and it is basic, but it's not cheesy, because we, eventually, those breaths are going to slow down and stop. So we certainly don't want to spend our valuable life minutes being miserable if we can help it. When we return to the breath, we are reminded of our health, the divine wealth. The divine wealth is health, right? And we're reminded of that. And we're reminded that only so many breaths, like a calculator, that we've got going on here. And remember, I'm not saying don't feel and shove it all down. No, that's the phrase for that is toxic positivity. Which to me sounds like an oxymoron if you're really doing it, authentically. But anyway, no, you got to feel, you got to validate, but not to reside there. That's the whole thing, which is where the relationships come in. And maybe a relationship with a professional, counselor or something. But to really feel, to heal, validate, and then choose to reside in a more positive place. And people are like, oh, you don't understand. Yes, it is. Happiness is a choice. It might be harder for some than others. It's still a choice, and it's a journey. And just like anything worthwhile, it takes risk and it takes effort. It's not like, I've had people say stuff to me. It's not like I just, entered the happiness lottery and won the ticket, right? I read, I work at it, I put tons of effort into my relationships. And I'm so blessed to have so many people in my life that I've had in my life for decades. It takes work like anything else. And what we make a priority is what will be successful, regardless of what you choose that to be. Okay, so that was about misery ages us. Just say no to it, okay? This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.